Buenos días a todos y a todas. Estamos aquí para otro episodio de nuestro programa de español en vivo. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We're here for yet another episode of our live Spanish Ask Me Anything sessions. Yo soy David y aquí es, I always point to the wrong side. It's mirrored. Aquí está mi colega David. Él está en Berlín y yo estoy aquí en Brooklyn, New York. Yo estoy muy contento de estar aquí con ustedes. I'm so happy to be here with you all. This is always one of my favorite parts of the week. And I am just ready to dive into a really wonderful episode. David, what is going on in your life? ¿Qué tal? ¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo está la vida en Berlín?
Muy bien, buenas tardes o buenas noches desde Berlín. Bienvenidos. Mi nombre es David y soy de Colombia. And I'm very pleased, very happy to be here with David. Thank you very much for the introduction, David. Todo está bien aquí en Europa. Bueno, un poco bien porque tenemos la segunda ola del coronavirus. Y la gente está un poco preocupada. The people are a bit worried about the second wave that's coming, the second wave of coronavirus. And so there is not much to say here. Estoy trabajando en casa. I'm working from home. And I'm very happy to be here sharing this space with all of you. And siempre estoy contento porque veo gente de Florida, de San Francisco, veo gente de Tennessee.
Yo soy de Tennessee.
Tú eres de Tennessee, you are from Tennessee, but you are in New York.
Sí, pero yo estaba en Nashville por casi o exactamente 6 meses. I was in Nashville for 6 months durante la cuarentena. So me encanta Tennessee y siempre me encanta ver que hay otras personas que vienen de Tennessee también.
That's amazing. So welcome everyone. And this is a space for you, for us, to practice Spanish. So last week we had a topic that was very, very interesting. And we have some homework for today. So David, if you think it's okay, we can start with the review of the sentence. Podemos empezar con el repaso de la frase de la semana anterior. So the sentence is this one. We are going to show it here on screen. So it's basically eso que dijiste es verdad. We are not showing here any translation, but the sentence means that what you said is true. And the game is here to choose the right answer. So we have 2 options. We talked about what que means and how we can use que in different sentences. Notice that this que doesn't have an accent mark on the E. So let's have a look. Here we have 2 possible use cases of que. The first one, A, says que as a relative pronoun. What is a relative pronoun? Well, if we don't remember that, we can review it today very, very briefly. The second option would be que, which is connecting here to different clauses. So we'd like you to share your options, your answers with us, with everyone, and here we are to talk about it, about the sentence. So what are we referring here to with that que? Eso que dijiste es verdad. What do you think? Is it A? Is it B?
If you need a quick refresher on dijiste, that is a pretty irregular form of the verb decir, to tell, and it's the past tense form in the second person singular, informal. lots of little grammatical terms, but basically what I want to say is dijiste means you said or you told. So it looks like we're getting a lot of answers in, and they all seem to be the same answer, which is great to see because it shows that you all were paying attention last week. So let's go ahead and display. Jack says A, and he and everyone else is correct. So the sentence here, eso que dijiste es verdad, would mean that. So eso, as we learned many, many episodes ago, is a demonstrative pronoun, which means it means this or that. In this case, it's a gender neutral. We're not sure what it's referring to. It's just something abstract, something you said, that which you said, that thing you said is true. It's the truth. So we have dijiste, you said, and now the question is, what did you say? What is the object of the verb decir? Dijiste que, dijiste eso. You said that. So that which you said is true. And we know that because of this, que is serving as a relative pronoun in this context, referring back to eso, that that you said, that thing you said, whether it's the secret you told, the lie you said, the truth in this context, but it's just some abstract thing that you said.
Yeah, so here we see some very, very important questions. Rita is asking what this sentence means. As you all heard, this sentence means that what you said is true. And the second important question, what is a relative pronoun? That's very important as well, because pronouns are always these words that we use in a different context, in a different situation, in a next sentence, for example, to refer back to another noun. That is, those words sound also very similar, pronoun and noun. So pronoun appears after a noun, and a pronoun, in this case, is always referring to a person, to an animal, to an object. So, and here we are using que as a relative pronoun. What does this mean? It's just a bridge that we build between two sentences to connect both of them. And we have two kinds of bridges. So in the first one, we have que as a relative pronoun. So if we remember well, one of the sentences of last week was la casa que compraste es bonita. I think I'm making up here a new sentence that I just came up with. So in this case, we are seeing que being used as a relative pronoun. Why? Because in the first part of the sentence, we have la casa. So we could just take que compraste out, and we would have a sentence like la casa es bonita. The house is beautiful. Yeah, it's a nice house. La casa es bonita. And here we want to specify that we are talking about the house that you bought actually. So that's a relative pronoun here, that que, because that que is following a noun, and that noun is la casa. So here we have two sentences. This is not a very clear example, because here we see that que compraste is in the middle of one important sentence, the main sentence, the main clause, which is la casa es bonita. So that's a relative pronoun. It's just a word that we use as a reference for another sentence, and it is typically related to that in English. So we would say the house that you bought is nice. Yeah. So that's how we do it in English, with the only exception that in Spanish we cannot drop that word in sentences. So we always use this reference. That's why que is very important. So que is not only connecting nouns with other sentences that are being used in them, but que can also connect two sentences, as we saw last week. When we say sentences like yo pienso que es importante aprender este tema. O pensamos, David y yo pensamos que este tema es importante. David and I are thinking that this topic is very important. And the topic that we prepared for today is related to this word que in comparison to que with an extra mark. So I think if you have no more questions, we can get started with the topic. So David, we have here some questions for the first part. Let's start with the first one, which is ¿Qué haces? It's as simple as it looks here on the screen. ¿Qué haces? What are you doing? ¿Qué haces? So the question word that we are using here is ¿qué? And ¿qué is equal to what in English? ¿Qué haces? What other question words do we know, David?
So there are a couple. We won't show you all of them, but in this example here, we see one of my favorites, Cuando. Cuando vienes a Alemania?
I should say that, David.
What did you say?
I should say that. I should ask you that. ¿Cuándo vienes a Alemania?
Espero poder viajar pronto, pero quién sabe. I hope to be able to travel soon, but who knows? ¿Cuándo vienes a Alemania? So that's a question David might ask me, and it's a question that we start with a question word, one of a handful that we have in Spanish. So we saw que in the last sentence, and we see cuando here, and we notice that both of them have an accent mark over one of the vowels. So this is helping us look at a word and identify, okay, yes, this is a question mark or a question word, much like we have in English: who, what, when, where, why, how, even, which. These are all examples of question words, and we're using them in Spanish just like we would in English to start off a question. So these are very easy to identify and to spot. Direct questions, if they're written down, they'll have a question mark. That's pretty easy too. But if you're speaking to someone and they ask, ¿Cuándo vienes a Alemania? ¿Qué haces? We know they're still asking us a question too.
And here we have another question, and it also shares the same things that you mentioned, which is here we have a question word that has a stress mark. So, ¿a dónde vas a ir en Navidad? So this literally translates to where. So in Spanish, we're giving a direction. You're moving to a place, and this is reflected also in the question word. And in Spanish, there are two options. You can write them in a single word. So a dónde without a blank space would be also perfect. And in this case, we are having words here in the first part of the question. ¿A dónde vas a ir en Navidad? Where are you going to go for Christmas? So this is the question. These are all questions, open questions that we can ask by using these question words. ¿Qué? Which means what, cuándo, which means when, por qué, which means why, and so on. So we won't go over all of them because what we want to talk about today is something different. I'm looking forward to Dana's question. Maybe you can share it with us. And in the meantime, we can just move on to the next part. So
I would like to say one thing, because this is something that's tricky for English speakers. When we talk about where are you going, in English, we usually can just say something like, where are you going to go for Christmas, or where are you going this afternoon? But in Spanish, we actually have to use this preposition that should technically in English grammatically be attached to the word where. Sometimes it's the word to. So to where are you going to go for Christmas? To where are you going this afternoon? To where should I send this package? In English, we can get by without this word. But in Spanish, the word a is very important. And we couldn't say something like, ¿Dónde vas a ir? Where are you going to go? Because we need to have that extra to, ¿A dónde vas a ir? To where are you going to go? In English, this sometimes manifests as putting that word to at the end of the sentence. Where are you going to? But in Spanish, we put it before. ¿A dónde? To where are you going? ¿A dónde vas?
Yeah.
And it's not something that we can just leave out.
That's a very important remark for asking questions in Spanish, because these words that we use differently in English, they are placed generally, like usually in the end. In Spanish, they are in the beginning.
Same thing with like, where are you coming from? In English, we tend to put prepositions at the end of the sentence, and maybe grammar teachers in the past have told you don't do that, but it's perfectly understandable if you do that. I do it all the time, and people will know exactly what you're saying. But in Spanish, you can't put that preposition at the end of the sentence. You have to say, to where are you going? From where are you coming? Until when will you be here? Stuff like that.
Yeah, that's good. So we see here a series of questions. Marie, this is going to be tackled in some minutes. So stay tuned. Susan is asking whether we can drop the ir. So the verb is just vas. So if we go back to the question, ¿a dónde vas en Navidad? That's perfect. That's great. That's possible as well. But then we would be using the present tense with the function of the future, which is completely okay in Spanish. And in this case, we are just using the future with ir a, with the very same verb ir again. But yeah, that's perfect. Okay. And Janice is asking, ¿por qué se usa en? I don't know if you are talking about en Navidad.
I think the best way I think about this is Navidad is sort of like a time period. It's like the Christmas season. So instead of, you could say something like ¿A dónde vas en agosto? In the month of August, or en ¿A dónde vas en 2 horas? Where are you going in 2 hours? So, David, maybe this isn't the best way to explain it, but I kind of think of it like
this is just a way for us to tell when this is going to happen. So in Navidad, at Christmas, we can also use ¿A dónde vas a ir para Navidad? ¿A dónde vas a ir para Navidad? That sounds weird to me, but I wouldn't say that's completely wrong. The thing with the prepositions in Spanish is that, I remember a professor at college telling us that prepositions are one of the most difficult things when learning languages, because each language has its own system of prepositions. So it's very difficult to translate them. So, and even to us, to Spanish speakers, both native speakers and people who learn Spanish as a foreign language, it's always sometimes a bit difficult to find a single preposition that's correct, like in this case, because we could say ¿A dónde vas a ir de Navidad? ¿A dónde vas a ir para Navidad? ¿A dónde vas a ir en Navidad? And all of them are referring to the same period of time, Christmas. So, but we can deep dive to this topic soon, because I think, David, we have no other choice. Prepositions are always important, and we should talk about them in a later episode.
I agree.
And and Rita is asking also what the difference is between que and que with an accent mark. And this is what is coming next. So David, if you agree, we can show this question to everyone. This sentence, actually, it's not a question. But let's have a look at the sentence. Quiero saber qué haces. Or quiero saber lo que haces. And here we have a sentence that is translated into English as I want to know what you are doing. So why did we start with questions and with question marks? Because we use them to ask questions, but we would like you to know that there are also indirect questions. So we don't need to see these question marks at the end to talk about questions. So we can embed them, we can put them into other sentences, and then there would be something attached to them. So I want to know something. What is that something? So this could be turned into a question. ¿Qué haces? Quiero saber qué haces. And here we see that the question word that we use in the question is going to also be used in the same way in a sentence. Like, I want to know what you are doing. Yeah. So there is an answer, and this answer is referring to something that you are doing. Yeah. So this is a way to ask indirectly something. And here we see also one difference, which is qué haces and lo que haces. So this question came also last week, if I remember well, because there is the case of what in Spanish, which means que, where we have two different options. Both sentences, quiero saber qué haces and quiero saber lo que haces, are correct. How is that? Well, it's somehow different. It's a bit difficult to explain because this only happens with the question word que. So in the first part, quiero saber qué haces. That's enough. That's clear. So we are using an indirect question as a complement to the sentence. I want to know something. What is that something? What are you doing? That's a question. In the second sentence, we are converting this question into a sentence, like a normal sentence, a statement. You are doing something. And lo que haces becomes part of that first sentence, just as it happened also with the indirect question. This is just telling us something. This literally means I want to know that you are doing. So here we are using que as a relative pronoun, again, as we saw in the sentence, in the review part, in the beginning of this episode. So que is just connecting lo, which is an abstract pronoun, so we don't know what is happening. So it's something that we use there to place. It is a neutral pronoun. It is not referring to a masculine noun nor to a feminine noun. It is neutral. Neutral in Spanish, we have three genders in Spanish: masculine, feminine, and neutral. All things, persons, animals, are either feminine or masculine. That doesn't mean this is a biological gender. It is just a grammatical gender. So don't get confused by that. Spanish is a very, very binary language. And there is a third gender, which is neutral, which means neither feminine nor masculine. And in this case, it's very, very useful when connecting two sentences. So I want to know that. Quiero saber eso. I want to know that. Quiero saberlo. And that que is connecting the lo, that part, with the verb haces. I want to know that you are doing. This is basically the sentence. And this only happens with que and lo que. So sometimes we can just exchange them in this kind of indirect questions. Quiero saber qué haces. Quiero saber lo que haces. Yeah. So David, would you like to add something here?
I think you covered it really well. I will say this is, of the examples we're going to show, this is the most confusing because you can interchange que with an accent mark and loque. I like to think of loque as that which. So I want to know that which you are doing, or you said that. And in English, we wouldn't really say that, but it's helpful to think about it that way. I want to know that you are doing, that unknown thing that you are doing. I want to know what it is. But I think the important thing to stress here is that we can interchange. These sentences mean the exact same thing. They're not questions, they're statements. I want to know, this is a statement of fact. I want to know what you're doing. I want to know that what you are doing. But either if you choose what you are doing with the word que, you must have the accent mark there because it's still an indirect question. I don't know what you're doing. What are you doing? I want to know what you're doing. Same, but you don't need the accent mark on the loque. But this is just specific to que, loque. And we'll show you an example a little bit easier to understand this sort of indirect question. You're still asking for information, but you're not phrasing it as a question. You're not saying, what are you doing? You're saying, I want to know what you're doing. I'd like to find out what you're doing. What you're doing is a mystery to me. Same sort of idea, but there's still some unknown information. And so we'll call it a question, but it's an indirect question, and that requires an accent mark too.
Yeah, that's perfect. I see here an important question asked by Linda, because we can also add the subject to the question, to the indirect question. So as a question, we can say, ¿Qué haces tú? Or ¿Tú qué haces? What are you doing? If we want to explicitly mention what's the subject of the sentence. In this case, we can also do it again. Quiero saber qué haces tú. That's one option. Or quiero saber tú qué haces. That's correct as well. The same doesn't happen to the second option with lo que, because I cannot add the tú to the sentence in the middle of it. I cannot say quiero saber tú lo que haces, because that's completely that sounds out of the scope. It is not possible to say that in Spanish, but we can attach it to the end of the sentence. Quiero saber lo que haces tú. So it is you talking to, not anyone else. So why is that? This is because lo is part of the first part. Quiero saber lo, quiero saber eso, quiero saber lo. And que is connecting both that lo with the second sentence. So we cannot place anything in between. Quiero saber lo que haces tú. That's the only option if we want to explicitly mention what the subject of the second question is, the indirect question. And in the other case, we can say, quiero saber tú qué haces. I want to know something, and that something is tú qué haces, as if we were asking directly tú qué haces. I want to know that. So I think these questions and indirect questions are clear when we see also some other examples, not only with que, but also with cuando. So you remember, David, the question, ¿Cuándo vienes a Alemania? When are you coming to Germany? So we can also make an indirect question out of that question. And it looks like, dime cuándo vienes a Alemania. Tell me when you are coming to Germany. So as you can see, here we are using a question that we presented previously. And this is part of another sentence, which is, tell me something. What is that something? So this used to be a question, and now we are putting that question as the complement of the verb tell, decir, which is tell, to tell. Dime algo. Tell me when you are coming to Germany. So why are we showing this? Because it's important that we recognize these indirect questions, and it's also important to see that pattern. So when it comes to questions, we always use these words with stress marks, as you see that cuando, as we saw it also with que, and so on. So we have another question, David. So maybe we can post it right now here. We can show it on the screen, David. What is the next question?
So we say here, David pregunta, ¿a dónde voy a viajar en Navidad? David asks to where you're going to travel for Christmas. So the first time we saw ¿a dónde in this episode, it was a question, ¿a dónde vas a viajar? To where are you going to travel? But here, this is actually a sentence. It's a declarative sentence or a statement of fact. The fact that I am asking where you're going to travel. And that doesn't change the fact that there's still some information missing. It's an indirect question because I'm still trying to figure out where you're going to travel for Christmas. I'm not framing it as a question, ¿a dónde vas a viajar? But I could also say, yo quiero saber, I want to know, ¿a dónde tú vas a viajar? Where you're going to travel, to where you're going to travel this Christmas. Mm-hmm. And we can still see why that's, why we'll consider that to be a question, even though it's not phrased like a question, just because we're trying to find some information that we could also find by asking the question directly, ¿a dónde vas a viajar? So that's an example of keeping the accent mark over this question word because it's still being used as a question word, just a little bit less directly.
Yeah, something that's been very useful for me is that these topics help me also understand how my language, my native language works. So by understanding the difference between direct and indirect questions and when to put that stress mark in Spanish, because it's a very, very difficult topic for Spanish native speakers, I could also understand how these indirect questions are being asked in English. So as a question, you would say, where are you going to travel for Christmas? And as an indirect question, we are just swapping the position of the subject and the verb. So we are not asking anymore, where are you going to travel for Christmas? But we are integrating this question into the main sentence, which is David is asking something. David asks, where you are going to travel for Christmas. So that helped me also learn that topic in English. And when we learn this in Spanish, the main aspect to always remember is to use the stress mark when using indirect questions and when writing them.
Jean
So,
got a she made a good correction here. We had a typo in the sentence. So here it says a donde voy a viajar, which would be to where I'm going to travel, yo voy. But then we translated it as where you're going to travel. So yes, we should have said a donde vas a viajar, or we should have said David asks to where I'm going to travel for Christmas. So thank you for pointing that out.
that's perfect. Yeah, so we are displaying it correctly on the screen. ¿A dónde vas a viajar en Navidad? That's correct. Awesome, great. So this leads us to the question, what the difference is between que without an accent mark and que with an accent mark. And the same also happens to some other question words that we saw in the beginning. But let's start with the difference between que with an accent mark and que without an accent mark. And I think the best option that we have is to use more examples. So let's start with this question. ¿Puedes decirme qué piensas? Can you tell me what you think? And here we can ask something very, very basic related to what we just said. That que, is that a question? What is the main question? The main question is, ¿puedes decirme? Can you tell me something? ¿Puedes decirme algo? And that algo is also a question. So this is an indirect question inside a question. So don't get confused by that. What are we saying here? We are using that que with an accent mark to indicate that there is a question. Yeah? And remember, we can also replace that que with lo que. ¿Puedes decirme lo que piensas? Although that would sound also a bit, I don't know, we are in Spanish, because we are just saying, ¿qué piensas? We can ask that. ¿Qué piensas? What are you thinking? So we would use here que with an accent mark. And an answer could be this one. So pay attention to this que. David, what is the answer?
Pienso que es un tema importante. I think it is an important topic. So here we see that we have the word que, but without an accent mark, and that's because it is actually being used to mean something different. Pienso que, I think that, and then we have this embedded little sentence, es un tema importante. Note that tema is a masculine noun, even though it ends in a. A lot of words in Spanish that end in ma, like el programa, el tema, are actually masculine. So keep that in mind. But pienso que es un tema importante. I think it is an important topic. Even in the English translation, we actually didn't include the word that, but that's not something that we can do in Spanish. We have to have the word that, as I mentioned last episode. So we could have written, I think that it is an important topic. But in English, it's optional, so we can leave it out. But notice here, that there's no indirect question that we're trying to find the answer to. I think that it is an important topic, statement of fact, but there's not sort of like, I'm not asking what is an important topic. I'm not saying I want to know what is an important topic. I'm saying I think that it is an important topic. So there's nothing really left unsaid. And K here is not being used as a question. What? It's being used as this sort of introducer to this other clause, this other sentence that is nested within or embedded within the main clause. I think what? I think that it is an important topic. So that's kind of what we talked about for all of last episode. And we're seeing it again here, just the difference between K without an accent mark in a sentence like this, or K with an accent mark in some of the earlier examples we showed you today.
So I think it is a key to remember that K without an accent mark usually means that in English. That is introducing a new sentence. So when we see that K or that in English sentences or that K in Spanish sentences, it is just telling us, watch out, a sentence is coming. Whereas when we see K with an accent mark, it is telling us, pay attention, a question is coming. It can be a direct question, ¿qué haces? What are you doing? Or it can be an indirect question. Queremos saber qué estás haciendo. We want to know what you are doing. So this is also very important because this principle also applies to other question words. So yeah, exactly. So the way how Rita phrases it is perfect. So without an accent mark, it is showing us a statement instead of a question. With an accent mark, it would be like a question. Yeah, awesome. So let's move on to this sentence. Ella quiere aprender cómo se prepara ese pastel. She wants to learn how that cake is prepared. So here we are also seeing a question, an indirect question. She wants to learn something, and that something is a question. How do we prepare that cake? So that's part of the sentence. So this is introducing a question, as we saw it also with K. But what if we have another sentence like this one? So David.
Cocinar es como hacer una investigación. Tengo que seguir algunos pasos. Cooking is like doing an investigation or a query. I have to follow some steps. So here we see como without an accent mark. With an accent mark, we knew it meant how. How do we prepare this cake? She wants to know how to prepare this cake. But here without an accent mark, it actually means something more like the word like. So that's how I tend to translate it without an accent mark, like or as. So cooking or to cook is like es como, doing or to do an investigation. So that is sort of the dichotomy that I maintain in my head. Como with an accent, how. Como without an accent, like or as. Does that explain it pretty well, David?
I think so. So we use que and como also for comparisons. This is something that we are going to learn also in the near future. And in this case, we are saying that cooking and doing an investigation are the same. We have to follow some steps. Tengo que seguir algunos pasos. So this difference is very clear in English because we also use different words in English. So if we have que as a question, we use what. If we use que as a word to connect to clauses, we use that. The same happens to how, meaning como, with an accent mark, and like, meaning como, without an accent mark. They are also equally pronounced, so there is no difference between como with an accent mark and como without an accent mark. It is just indicating that it has a different function, a different role in the whole context, in the sentence, in the phrase. But let's have a look at this sentence. This is the last one, the last question word that we want to talk about today, which is cuando. Because cuando means when. So, ¿cuándo vas a la playa? Easy. When do you go to the beach? So if we want to see this cuando being used in an indirect question, what would we have, David?
We could say, nos gustaría saber cuándo vas a la playa. We would like to know when you're going to the beach. So this is kind of similar to some of the earlier sentences we saw. Quiero saber qué haces. I want to know what you're doing. We would like to know, nos gustaría saber cuándo vas a la playa. So it's still a question word, even if it's indirect, because there's still information that we're trying to figure out. When are you going to the beach? We could ask this as a direct question, as with cuando with an accent mark. Cuándo vas a la playa? Nos gustaría saber cuándo vas a la playa. We would like to know when you're going to the beach.
Mhm.
So that's an example of cuando being used here as a question word. But then we could also juxtapose it with this sentence that says, voy a la playa cuando hace sol. And this one can be a little bit trickier because in English we would translate the word cuando the same. Whereas with como, we could say como with an accent is more like how, and como without an accent is like or as, or que with an accent is what, que without an accent is more like that. Here, cuando kind of takes on the same meaning, but we're still using it as less of a question. So it can be a little bit tricky, but still easier to think about, okay, I use cuando with an accent when it's a question, without an accent when it's not a question, and they both mean when, but I have to use them in different contexts. So we say, voy a la playa cuando hace sol. I go to the beach when it's sunny. So here there's no question really involved. When it's sunny, I go to the beach. And David, what else would you add to my explanation?
Yeah, that's perfect. So this is the key. We are going to use question words with stress marks, even in indirect questions. As it happens in the sentence, voy a la playa cuando hace sol, we are not referring to a question. We are just placing the action of going to the beach in a specific time, cuando hace sol. Yeah? If it's not sunny, we don't go to the beach. So voy a la playa cuando hace sol. Or every time when it's sunny, I go to the beach. So basically, this is all about question words. We use them also in indirect questions. So don't wonder why we see this qué, quién, cuándo, cómo, por qué with an stress marks, and without the question marks at the end, because they are just being used in indirect questions. So we want to know something more, and this is how we embed questions in more complex structures. So you can pose your questions if you have some questions. Mari is asking, ¿qué quiere decir sé? What is, we don't use this letter in Spanish, Mari, if this is your question.
But if you wanted to use the expression ¿qué quiere decir?, that's a common one. ¿Qué quiere decir algo?
You mean the question. ¿Qué quiere decir?
Yeah, that's the correct usage of the word que. We're asking, what does this... I mean, I translate it kind of weirdly back to English because it looks like if you take it piece by piece, it's kind of like, what wants to say something? So you have something and you know that it wants to say something. So you're saying, what does it want to say? Which is a weird way to ask, what does this mean? ¿Qué quiere decir el árbol? What does el árbol want to say? What does it mean? So it's a way of asking what a Spanish word means in English. And that's a question. ¿Qué quiere decir el árbol? ¿Qué quiere decir el libro? And that's a case in which you would use que with an accent mark because it is a question. You're asking what. So that's a good example.
Okay. Another question would be ¿qué significa? Say. Significa means to mean. Yeah.
Yes.
Significa. ¿Qué significa say? That's nice. There was a question here that I see. It is related to the topic that we talked about 2 weeks ago. Then I wanted to bring this up again. So it's a long comment, and I think you are asking here about the answers which are both correct. So you can ask, ¿tú qué vas a hacer el día de Acción de Gracias? What are you gonna do on that day of Thanksgiving? Or ¿tú qué harás el día de Acción de Gracias? Yes, both forms are correct. ¿Tú qué vas a hacer ese día? Or ¿tú qué harás ese día? Both are correct.
Don't forget to put the accent mark over the second A in harás, because that ending is A with an accent mark followed by S. It's so confusing trying to do mirrored stuff on the screen, but I'm trying to put the A first with an accent mark followed by the S. So that applies to any verb that you're attaching that ending to, whether it's a regular verb, a regular infinitive, or an irregular stem, like hacer turns to ar, yo haré, tú harás. Every single one of those endings has an accent mark except hemos. Nosotros haremos, we will do, we will make. So it's important to remember that when you're writing them out.
Yeah, that's correct. And Kelly, don't worry. I think you didn't miss too much. But you can also watch the beginning of this episode on Facebook later. Clocks change here in Berlin as well, so it's not as late as it was last week. So I'm also very excited about that.
Clocks are going to change here this weekend. I'm not excited. I love the daylight, and I'll just be so sad to see it go an hour earlier. But that's okay. We'll make it through together.
Yeah.
So we are approaching the hour. I know we want to keep it kind of wrapped up, if possible, in under an hour. David, so why don't we go ahead and do the homework, or the test questions and the homework question. And in the meantime, we can sort of give you the goodbye spiel that we usually do, just to say, if you want to watch earlier episodes or the first part of this episode, if you missed it, this will be on our YouTube channel and on this Facebook page. As always, Babbel USA on Facebook. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, the whole slew of social media platforms. And then one thing I also wanted to mention was that we're launching a new Babbel branded Spanish podcast called Un Día en Español, a day in Spanish, aimed at beginning learners. I think a lot of you would really, really like it. It's a great chance to hear Spanish used in real world context. Episodes are pretty short. This pilot episode, I think, is about 10 minutes. So I will drop the link below if you would like to listen and give us feedback. There's a short survey to take at the end, and we'd really love to hear from you. I'm featured in the episode for about 10 seconds total, so see if you can pick out my voice. But it's great for learners who are just starting out or who maybe have a little bit of a foundation. So I think you all would really, really like it. But that's the link, and you can find it in the comment section here. Why don't we go ahead and turn to these test questions, David, and then we can give a homework question too.
Yeah, that's great. So don't forget to check out this new podcast, and let's go directly to the questions. So we're gonna start with this sentence. Quiero saber, vas a estudiar para tu examen. And here we have two options: cuando without an accent mark and cuando with an accent mark. So what would be the right answer here? What would be the right spelling here? And I think while you are giving us your answers, either one or two, it is also very important to mention that when speaking, this doesn't make a big difference. So this is not a matter of breaking the way we communicate in Spanish It is just a way to, it is just a topic that helps us understand better Spanish and how we can also spell it correctly. But the main idea is we want to accomplish our communicative goals. So we have needs. If we want to speak, don't get confused by that, because the main thing is let's speak, let's write, let's have some exchanges in Spanish. So we see some answers here, and it's great. All of them are two. So, ¿cuándo? With an accent mark. Quiero saber cuándo vas a estudiar para el examen. And that's correct. Well done, Linda and everyone. Quiero saber cuándo vas a estudiar para el examen. So it's an indirect question. ¿Cuándo vas a estudiar para tu examen? What does this sentence mean, David? So you can give the translation while I add the second sentence.
It means I want to know, quiero saber, cuándo, when you are going to study, vas a estudiar para tu examen, for your exam. I want to know when you're going to study for your exam. Or, and if it were a question, like you just said, David, ¿cuándo vas a estudiar? When are you going to study?
Yeah. So in this context, we are referring to a question, Rita, and that's why we use cuando with an accent mark. So accent marks always refer to questions. So if we use the cuando without an accent mark, it would be something to tell us, like it is indicating a time, point in time. So if we go back to the sentence, voy a la playa, I go to the beach when it's sunny, cuando hace sol, it is just saying, it is actually placing an action of when I am going to the beach every time when it's sunny. So in this case, we are just asking, when are you going to study for the exam? And that's why the second option is the right one. So let's put on the screen the second sentence, yo voy. And this one is a tricky one as well.
David, I want you to explain this one because it even confuses me sometimes.
Yeah, I can do that. So what does this sentence mean, David?
So we see yo voy, which we know means I go or I'm going. We see mis amigos, my friends, and we know that the options donde mean where. So we have some parts of a sentence that put together mean something like I go where my friends, I'm going where my friends. In English, we don't really say something like that, so that might be a little bit confusing. But David, as we were writing the sentence, you were telling me about a cool little trick in Spanish.
Yeah. So this sentence means I'm going to my friends or where my friends live, or to my friends with an apostrophe in English, which means that I'm visiting them. I'm going to the place where they live. So in Spanish, when we use donde, in that case, to connect, to indicate where, as it was also with the example sentence, voy a la playa cuando hace sol. In this case, we can also use the word as this use is actually not, this is not a question word. This is not an adverb. This is a preposition. So when we use donde plus a noun, donde mis padres, for example, I can say, yo estoy donde mis padres. It means that we are indicating I'm in a place where my parents live. So at my parents. And in this case, the right answer is the first one, donde, without an accent mark, because there is no question implied here. So I'm just connecting a sentence. I'm just saying, I'm going to that place where my friends live, in Spanish. And it is just very short. This doesn't happen too often in Spanish, but today we are lucky and we see a sentence with the word donde. Yo voy donde mis amigos. And it means basically I'm going to the place where they live, to my friends. And we have a last sentence. This is going to be the homework for next Tuesday. So we are gonna copy paste it here, and this is the homework. So, cuéntanos un poco sobre el fin de semana. Hiciste el fin de semana, and here we see the translation and what is being surrounded by asterisks. So, we'd like you to add the word that is missing, or the words, we don't know. Okay. So, I think this is a good way to make the difference between cuando with an accent mark and cuando without an accent mark. This is basically it. So cuando without an accent mark is just telling us that something is happening at the time that is sunny, for example. So I'm going to the beach when it's sunny. So we can also even translate this every time. So when it's sunny. I'm going to the beach when it's sunny. So this is the homework. Again, stay tuned. We will be back next Tuesday. I think we have sessions planned for November. It's always Tuesday, same time, same channel. I don't know what time it is in the US right now, David.
In New York, it's about 2 p.m. right now. So, but next week, I think daylight savings time is this weekend. So we will be back on the same. It'll always be 1 p.m. Eastern time. But keep in mind that clocks are changing for Americans this weekend. But David is right. We're planning on doing every Tuesday in November, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Unless something changes. Next week, a week from today, is Election Day in the US, so that's a big milestone. But we should be back, no issues there. So yeah, I think that's all we had to say today. Check out the podcast. We can put the link here again for you if you missed it. Follow us on social media, connect with us on Quora at our Space Everything language. But in the meantime, this has been so much fun. We will let you get on with your days. Usually these don't last an hour, so I know we've all been here for quite a while. But I just want to say thank you again for everyone who tunes in week after week. This is so much fun. We really have a great time helping you learn and answering your questions and seeing that you paid attention from week to week and carry these lessons forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you also from my side. It's always been a pleasure for me, and we are already looking forward to next Tuesday. Have a great day, que tengan un buen día, and nos vemos el martes. Adiós.
Adiós, amigos.